conference will now be recorded.
Yesterday's session, please go ahead with your questions. I think, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Again, so yesterday we were able to configure the flexi time, and this is an issue with the systems. There's an backend issue which is causing a problem with the job, and that's the reason why the posting was not happening. So I was able to check yesterday. So I mean, they're still working on it's not with the one sales demo, it's with all the sales demo. I think it will be get resolved by in 1 or 2 days. There's some patch which is working on it. So we'll keep this aside. We'll take it up later. Once the issue is fixed, we can see the postings in the account. So this account. Okay. So today we'll go to the next segment of the time valuation, which is basically we have seen that there's a total overtime, out of which certain hours is being redirected to flexi time, and the remaining hours has to be considered as an overtime. Now in that part of section, let's quickly look at a working sheet. So we said, taking an example like the previous ones, we said there's a 10 hours. If there's a 10 hours overtime, those 10 hours, out of which 4 hours should be redirected to the flexi time, and the remaining OT hours should be taken into consideration as an overtime. And that overtime can be splitted based upon the base or the premium rates. So today we're going to speak about, we're going to configure about the remaining OT hours that are being calculated outside of your flexi time. Okay. So in this case, what we need to do is we need to create another time valuation, which is basically a fifth valuation in our case, where the input would serve as the remaining OT hours, right? So input would be remaining OT hours, which is basically, which is basically out of flexi time, the total flexi time. We are removing a part of which is total of overtime. We're removing part of flexi time, and the remaining hours are the OT hours here. Then we're gonna split the two into one as an OT at base rate, and the other one is at OT at premium rate. Okay. So how we're going to do it, what kind of valuation type we're going to use, that is what we're going to see it here. So I'm duplicating this. Let's take another evaluation type. This is a sixth evaluation. So this would be like overtime. Sorry, overtime split into base and premium rates. Now here, as I said, the initial input would be the remaining part of overtime. Now, if you see this, we have given a difference which is like your positive working time. In case if somebody records hours outside or out of the planned working hours, which falls into extra hours, that hours will be taken as a input here for the previous time valuation, and we are giving fixed value threshold, which is actually 4 hours, which 4 hours are considered as your flexi time, and outside of 4 hours will be considered as your overtime. So, whatever data that is coming out is actually your input to the sixth evaluation. So, we're going to take this as my input. Since it should be acting as an input, we are keeping the reverse sign as no and give one external code here. Now, what is the valuation type here is, since it's already says it's in split. So we have an evaluation type called aggregate input groups and split. Now, now depending upon the requirement, now whether you wanted to split it based upon some dynamic condition, or if you wanted to have a fixed value. Let's say people generally, when these kind of splits happen, right, they will have a fixed value, and across the organizations we have seen that if any employee is working above 2 hours, which is on overtime hours, after removing the flexi in a week, should be considered as an overtime. So here it is actually a fixed value. The basic funda is to talk about the fixed value. Now, what kind of threshold type, whether it is a threshold group, a dynamic condition, or a fixed value, that we choose based upon the threshold type field here. So, if we choose fixed value, I have to provide a threshold value. If I choose a time type group, then I have to give another time type group which will conditionally or dynamically set that threshold. But in this case, I'm taking this as a fixed value for, let's say, 2 hours, just to make it easy and understanding. This is 2 hours, and now we wanted to split it accordingly. Now, what is a base one, what is a premium one? So anything that is falling within the threshold, that is within the 2 hours, should be considered. I mean, normally the system considers and captures the data inside this time type group below section, and anything that is falling outside the threshold will be captured under the time type group above section. So now we'll have to create a separate time type group where you can call out this as an overtime up to 2 hours at base rate. Now, since we are talking about the base rate, we are saying that some calculation or evaluation factor is needed here. So, since it's a base, I would choose overtime base here. And let's say, in case if you wanted to choose the overtime, if it is 2 and the output you wanted has 2 only, then you can keep it as 1, which means how this will consider is, let's say there's a 2 hour overtime already recorded in the system. You don't want to split it. It is given at a base rate, which is your $100. So it should be considered as one only. Now, if let's say it has to get here, it is not about the money, it's about the hours which are getting replicated. Like, for example, if it's an premium hours, if somebody is working for 1 hour, it should be considered as 1.5 hour, which is like zero point 0.5 hours you're giving at a premium rate. So in that case, we need to write it as 1.5. This I'm keeping it simple, it's a base one, so I'm keeping it as 1. So even if it is even if I've recorded the 10 hours as an overtime which is falling within this category, it should be considered as one only, and it should be given at a base rate which is $100. So that $100 is taken care in the integration, however. So how the integration will understand it, if it's going as an outside as an output, it will show the flag as overtime base, and they can actually calculate and raise it against the $100. Since it's a calculated it's an output, it will be a calculated event. This is yes because we are raising this as an amount, and flag should be payroll because it is going to the payroll, and UI component as yes. And one quick thing to understand here is, now this factor also depends upon what kind of settings we are doing on the job information for a field called as an overtime compensation. Now let's quickly understand how this works is. Sorry. Yeah. So now this factors whether it is premium or base premium or overtime base or a premium. Now depends upon what kind of variant you are setting it here. Now let's say it is only time of year. Okay, this component is only time of year. So whatever you choose here, whether it is overtime base or overtime premium, this both will consider, let's say, okay, 1 second, let me do this. OT base L2. Let me create another one. And overtime above 2 hours at premium rate. Valuation factor, you have to choose premium rate, and let's say it is 1.5. That means if I've recorded 1 hour extra as an overtime, and if it falls into this category, then it will be considered as 1.5 hours. So that means you're getting zero point 0.5 as an extra premium hours. So when it comes to the payment, how it works is, in the payroll, if it is one for 1 hour it is $100. Since it's replicated and given at a premium rate, it is 1.5 hours, you will get $150. That's how it works. There's nothing to do, the component that you define here is nothing to do with the payroll that is processed in the payroll side, ECP payroll or some other premium payroll systems. Here it will only replicate and only take the valuation factor for hours only. This I'm specifically raising it because we are not defining any component here. So, and the other one is since it's a calculated time, because it's an output, it's a calculated time. You wanted to raise this as yes, and also on the UI, if you wanted to show, you can have that. Let me give this as premium L2. Just adding it here. Now, just remember, like whatever we have configured. This is OT split valuation method. Sorry for that. Yeah, valuation method is per day. We're taking per day because it will be easy for us to calculate the data there. So now, whatever we have, no matter any of the valuations, any valuations that has an output with the overtime base or overtime premium always depends upon the factor that we define here. Now, let's say if it is time off, that means no matter if you have defined it as an overtime base or a premium, any hours that are being calculated or valuated, that will be redirected to time off only. Now, how that works is, let's say if it is overtime, let me take this one. Okay. Now, if the overtime is time off, as we have seen in the system, so any output with OT, base, or premium will always be redirected to time off. That means it will get converted. These hours will be getting converted to time off and they will be given to the time off. And this time off is nothing but you have to store it in the TOIL. Like yesterday, we have defined it in the working time account, right? Similarly, we have to define another time account, and that time account will be serving as a time off time account, which is actually your compensatory off. So this configuration will look later, but how this works is we'll see that. Now let's say we have another thing called as an payout. Right? We have only payout options. So here also, no matter what it is, even if you define it as an OT premium or OT base, it will redirect it to payroll, and all the hours will be paid out as a monetary terms. So now let's say the only thing comes into picture when you have two variations here. Now system has to understand what has to go to the payroll and what has to go to the time off. Now you have another option which is called as a time off plus payout. Now here this is where it is very important, like what you wanted to capture as a payroll and what you wanted to capture as a time off. Now if you have defined, let's say, payout and time off, now anything or any output that is being considered as an OT base, if we have defined it as an OT base, that will be automatically redirected to payroll. And any hours that are considered as a premium, they will be considered and redirected to time off. That's what here the major output is. So this is a standard thumb rule and you cannot make a variations to it. So if you're thinking that you wanted a data to be given as a timeout, so somehow you have to evaluate such that it falls into this category, OT premium category. And the valuation factor, definitely, if you don't want it to calculate it, you don't want it to give it into a point 0.5 or some extra thing, you can keep it at 1, but the data has to fall into this section so that it is redirected to time off. If it is falling into the OT base, that will automatically be directed to payroll. So this is very important to understand because this goes in hand to hand, and the configuration, you cannot alter any configuration. You will have to tweak in such a way that the configurations, so that the output that you are thinking to fall within the payroll or time off, you can set that configuration as likely. So now since this is there, let me add it up. System, when you add it and try to evaluate, let's go back to time profile. So yesterday's we were able to see like it is falling above 4 hours, right? Now any hours that is falling extra now, like 2 hours extra also should be see. Now if you see this, since we have directed and the payroll, and if you see this the default time variation, it's a time off. And if we have seen, it's only time off since both the base rate and the premium rate OT hours has to be added to that particular time off section. Now system is not allowing me to add because there's no time account type. If you look at this configuration, there's no time account type defined for this particular section, and this is specifically called as a time off in lieu. So this means you can convert the recorded hours into time off, and they can be taken as a compensatory off later on. And in order to have that configuration set in, we have to define a time off in lieu account here in the time profile section. And this is exactly the same kind of an what we have created for the flexi time. So I'm just taking an existing one. Okay. So if we look at this, similar to the one, give a name that is called out. So payout eligibility, you can keep it payout eligible. Let's say you have recorded, let's say 40 hours in a year, okay, complete 40 hours in a year, out of which you have used only 30 hours and 10 hours are remaining at the end of the year. Now on the December 31st, you have an account with the 10 hours balance remaining in this particular account. Now it's up to organization's policy if you it will get lapsed or given as a payout, or it will be carry forwarded. It depends upon what kind of requirement an employee has. So employer can decide if they wanted to do a payout eligibility. You can set a eligible year, and then they can make a payout out of the remaining hours. If it's a forfeiting one, which the record all the recorded hours up to the weekend, up to the year end, it has to get lapsed, then we normally do a interim account update and set the balance to zero completely, so that it's a fresh start from January 2023. But let's say it's a carry forward, then we use again the same interim rule, and we don't need to define it as an so that it is taken forward, because it's a permanent account, it will still remain in the account. But if there is any um kind of a forfeiting balance, like this carry forwarded account balance has to be taken over only up to certain limit, you have to set an interim account rule and set the booking period for that particular account. So so not going into that detail right now, so keeping it into not eligible, and account creation type will be permanent here, since it's not an accrual, because the data whatever the hours which are getting, we are getting it from timesheet. So no accrual here. Just give an external code and save it. Okay. Once you add it here, system will not accept until unless you add it on the time type level. Since we needed this as a compensatory off, we normally have it as a time type level. Let's see if this is the correct one. Mhm. Mhm. Let me create one. Compensatory off. You can create a workflow if needed here. Adding it. Hours will be unit will be hours only. Absence will be classification will be absence. Keeping it global here. The other thing that is needed here is, since it will be in hours, we need a fractions that needs to be booking. You can allow it in hours or minutes, or you can also allow for the full day booking here. And then if you wanted to display the duration, depending upon this, you can tweak in whether you wanted to have it as a work schedule deduction or a calendar day deduction. Since it's only one account, I'm going with the posting rules, posting priority. So here, select the one which we have chosen at the TOIL account. Keep this as one. If you have any validation rules, you can create one validation rule. And let's say comp of 2. It's a compensatory of I wanted to enable it in the employee self service and also as a favorite time, because I can forfeit any of the negative. I can take that as an extra hours for my comp of thing. So 6, 7, 8, 9. Just save it. This is just a warning, because if you see, there's a change in the time type, time profile. So there are certain standard objects for time, like for example time profile, work schedule, holiday calendar. If you make any changes, automatically there is a recalculation which happens and runs the recalculation in the backend to adjust the change data to your current data. When you do this, still not it will accept anything, because though we have added it here, we have to do another step called as an account creation. Let's see. Okay, so we need another account similar to the flexi time app. So we have to go to manage data, manage time of structures to create a account. So similarly, like previous what we have done, we only need an account creation. So this is the account that I have generated there. Just add January 1st and end date. You can give anything, because it's a permanent, it will automatically pick the infinity hours. So it's a future dated one. Even if it is future dated, we can run it right away. So when the account gets created, so if you see here, we got an account created here. Since it's a permanent account, starting with validity and an infinity account. So if you see this, there's no postings right now. Now your system should able to record the hours and split the hours. Let's say I will start recording. If you see here, this is the compensatory off, and it's getting 10 hours added here. And let's see how how that 10 hours are being calculated. We'll look at the trace here. Let me show it here. So this is how the posting should happen. If you look at the posting type, it's an overtime compensation. and it is automatically set. On 21st of August, we have 2 hours. 27th of August, it is 1.5 hour. Sorry, it's an amount. So on overtime for 28th, it is 4.3 hours. So that's how the postings gets created the moment we have the data here. And if you look at the valuation here, so if you look at it, the flexi times that are falling above 4 hours is actually 8 hours, out of which the two up to 2 hours are 4, which is like 2 days, since we are taking it as a daily. So on 28th, it's 2 hours extra. 27th, it is 2 hours extra. And anything that is falling above 4 hours, which is actually your overtime premium. And 28th is actually 3 hours. And on 27th, it's 1 hour. So since it's available as an account, you can actually create a compensatory of for, let's say it's starting with 28th October, but if you wanted to make changes accordingly, so you can have the hours, because it will have a different postings. If you look at the postings available at the backend, on up to 27, it has only the balance of about 3.3, and post that on 28th and 28th, we have additional hours posted, and that hours are getting automatically changed based upon the posting that happened at the backend. So this is how you can request for a time of for whatever hours that we have recorded in the system. Any questions so far? Madhumita, Akash, Kashinath. Okay, I take that as no here. So we will see some of the configurations, like let's say um, if somebody is working on a Saturday or Sunday or a public holiday, then let me make a change here also. Now, whatever we have seen here, right, whether it is premium or base, it is getting automatically redirected to the time off. But let's say if I wanted to have it specifically for both sections, then I can go ahead and make the changes. I wanted payout and time off. So if you see this, now the system has automatically calculated it. It was 10 hours before, but since the moment I made the changes to the overtime compensation, the payout and time off, that means system will understand that instead of 10 hours being redirected only to time off, there are certain hours which has to be going to the payout, which is actually the payroll, and the remaining hours should be going to the time off. And that's the reason, if you see this week we have added only 6 hours. So so if you look at this, overtime hours is up to 2, is actually 4 hours, and overtime hours above 2 hours at a premium rate. So basically, at the premium rate is what we are redirecting it to the compensatory of. Since it's 4 into 1.5 is actually 6 hours. So that is what we are getting added here. And there are total 7.30 minutes. Why? Because it is being calculated and brought back from the previous weeks. So that's how you can make the changes, or you can redirect the data that you are capturing in the system. Um, so instead of overtime, you can also keep this as an overtime, value it up to today, which means it will look at the data that has bought forward up to today, and your hours can get changed accordingly. Since up to today and per day will not make much difference until unless it's a weekly timesheet. Let's look at this and weekly timesheet. Let's say evaluate up to the whole sheet. So if you look at it, the whole sheet means it will consider your hours that are falling up into your, let me remove this. Um, So when I remove the absence, so when we look at it, it's basically 7 hours which are being, since it's on whole sheet, it will look at the complete 40 hours. And from the 40 hours, it will look at the overtime that is being calculated. So when you look at the overtime, it's actually your 7 hours as an overtime. So here, flexi time up to 4 hours is being redirected to the working time difference, which is out of 7, 4 hours should fall into your working time difference, and remaining 3 hours is actually your overtime. So inside this also, we are splitting this hours into, let's say the first 2 hours will be given at a base rate, and the remaining 1 hour will be given at a premium rate. Now if you look at it, the one premium hours that is being calculated, right, the one is actually 1.5 rate, which is actually 1.5. So if you look at this now, added this week is 1.3. I mean, which is nothing but 1.5. So it numerically 1.5 is nothing but 1.5 hour. So that's what it is getting added this week. So there's already an hour which is getting added from the previous week. So that's the reason it is showing as 3 hours. So that's how you can evaluate the complete sheet. Based upon the configurations that you set up here, you can see the difference automatically on the system. So this is one kind of evaluation. Now let's quickly look at another type of evaluation. Let's say if somebody is working on a non-working day. Now, now based on this concept, let's say if somebody is working on Saturday or Sunday, okay, which is basically your um, week off according to the work schedule, they should be getting the hours at base. Let's say you have a requirement, they should be getting a payroll, not to be considered as an compensatory off. So first thing and the foremost that you need to come is, I have to evaluate in such a way that it falls into OT base. If they say that, let's say employer or a organization says that if anybody is working on Saturday or Sunday, it should be given as a payroll only. It is not considered as an um, compensatory off. So the moment they say payroll, that means you have to bring the evaluation at a point where it falls into OT base, which means if you look at the configuration, anything that is falling on OT base will be redirected to the payroll. So if they say that it should be falling into the premium, then it should go to the time off, which means it will be redirected to the compensatory off and they can take an off. So I'm taking this as an payroll, which should be considered as an OT base. And how do we do that is through another valuation. Let's say Saturday, Sunday hours at for payroll. Okay, I'm keeping this as payroll. Valuation type. Not taking this as a valuation type. Now here, what should be the input here? So the input is always, let's say, even if you're working on Saturday or Sunday, you still go and record using these hours, right? Normally. So how do we do that? Is basically looking at. Let me duplicate this. So the recorded hours. Recorded hours without breaks is actually your input here. Okay. Since it's an input, we will add this as an external code here. And now the valuation type here should be a different valuation where system should understand whether the hours that are being recorded are recorded on Saturday or Sunday. So that consideration should be there, and you have a special evaluation type which actually filters out the inputs. Now, if you look at so far we have seen aggregate input split, we have seen deduct group, we have seen difference between, right? Now we have a consideration where you can filter out the times. Now you have filter input groups. The moment you select, there are certain fields which get automatically enabled here. Now, if it is filter input groups, that means you will have to create another filter, which is actually system will understand that any data which is falling within this threshold should be captured. So this is an already existing one, but you still have an option because it's an addition button. You can add if you as per the requirement. Now, if you look at this, you have to create a filters depending upon the various sections available here. Now, let's say if you have a requirement where you wanted to consider the data which is on a non-working day, right? For example, this working day and non-working day, everything that you're getting derived from here is based upon the work schedule that an employee is assigned to. So if you look at this work schedule, Saturday and Sunday are your non-working days. Now you can directly select non-working day because we have a requirement which is called as a Saturday and Sunday, right? So you can have this filter enabled. But let's say only working days, if you wanted to keep only the working days and you wanted to go it other way around, like for example you wanted to filter out the working day hours, so you can also filter out based on the requirement. But for our requirement, we are taking non-working day. Okay. And let's say keeping this as non-working day L2. Now, if you take this kind of filter, right, if it's non-working day system, this filter can be used for any type of work schedule. So let's say, for example, Saturday and Sunday here is a non-working day. But let's say tomorrow, if any of the if any of the employee has Monday and Tuesday as a non-working day, so in that case, this filter can easily be work out because we are dynamically picking it up. So no matter if you have defined anything as a non-working day in the work schedule, that will automatically pick it up. But if you wanted to specifically filter out as Sunday or Monday, then instead of using this section, you can give this as blank. and you can use these sections. You can pick up Saturday and Sunday here and going forward that way, right? So, and let's say if you wanted to filter out any hours that are falling in day model shift classification, so you can select those early or late shift, which you might have already seen where we define it in the work schedule. If you wanted the hours that to be defined based on the period day model or a period shift classification, you can define the time record filter to it. And what is the time valuation filter we use is filter input groups. Now let's say so in this case specifically, if it's a non-working day, your public holiday is also considered as a non-working day. Now that depends upon if your customer says, so my non-working day should be non-holiday specific, then you don't define this. Please use this filter. But if they says it's a non-working day, no matter if it is Saturday, Sunday, or a public holiday, you can use this filter, right? So that's how. And if you look at this, we have holiday class filters for previous day, current day, and next day. This section is only used specifically for if you have a cross midnight. Like, for example, what is a cross midnight is? Let's say your shift is starting from today, which is falling between 2 days. Okay. Let's say your shift is falling between 10 p.m. in the night till 6 a.m. in the morning. So here you will have 2 days trans, which is basically uh, on 1st November plus 2nd November. Let's say if there is a holiday on 2nd November, okay, ideally this is complete day for an employee, but however, if 2nd November as per the holiday calendar is a holiday, then system should understand that this hours that is falling into this should also be considered into this valuation. So that's the reason why you see if it is a previous day, it's a current day, it's a next day. So that's what you can create a filter and select the hours falling into this also evaluated and paid out. This is specifically applicable for only for the cases where a cross midnight work schedule is applicable. So for our requirement, I'm choosing an existing filter already, which is actually your so Saturday and Sunday. I think I will have to create a new one. Hmm, I'm taking this non-working day. Now just add it here. How this will work is, let's say even on the non-working days, if you wanted to specifically raise a segment against additional filter, let's say today is Saturday and I'm working from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Okay. So you can also have that segment filter. If somebody is working in the late night hours, you will have to have a specific premium hours to be paid out. Then you can also define that hours here. So like for example, even on Saturday, if I'm working between 9 o'clock till let's say 12 o'clock, you give an external code here. That means on this will check additional filters like on Saturday, on non-working day, if you're working between these hours. So we are not taking this into consideration. And now you can define it. Since I wanted this as a payroll, it should fall into So this is falling within the threshold. I will define only the time type group below. Okay. So let's say hours recorded on non-working days. I wanted to keep this as a brace, but let's say I'll calculate this as 7.5 rate. This is a calculated time. I wanted to give it as payroll and then UI component as yes. This is non-working day. Hours L2. Let's quickly check this out. If you see so far, we do not have any hours that are being recorded on Saturday or Sunday. Let's say on Saturday I have worked for, so if you see it's a non-working day. There's no applied plan button. Let's say I'm using 9:30 and let's say I worked up to 2 o'clock, 2:30. Sorry. If you see this, there was a difference here. +1 added. That means it's crossing plus day, which is 1 day. That means it will consider the complete day, aside from starting at 9 o'clock in the morning to next day, midnight 1 o'clock. So that's the reason we were showing you that indicator, because that indicator defines that you're falling between 2 days. So here, when I add it here, so if you see here, hours recorded on a non-working day is actually your 4 hours. Since it's a payroll, it will not be added here. It will be calculated as a pay types. Your non-working days, it's calculated as your overtime and which is evaluated. So, 51. Sorry, not this one. I think this. So it's 4 hours, which is calculated at 9:30 to 1:30, which is 4 hours. So that's how it is getting calculated at the payroll level. So this is how you can create a filter with the evaluation type separately. If you wanted to specifically work on Saturday or Sunday and you wanted to evaluate as in payroll. Now, if you wanted to redirect it to the time off, then you should be selecting the premium, overtime premium. That will be automatically redirected to the time off section. Any questions here? I think it's already overwhelming, but I'll take a pause at here. Tomorrow we'll start with another evaluation where you can raise an error, where you can collect monthly some hours and raise an error message to the employee if they are crossing those limits. We'll also see the time validation rules. Um, any questions from anyone? Okay, for tomorrow, please try to work on the system and let us know in case of any questions.